to Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse, a podcast exploring cult classics, subcultures, and geek media. I'm Nick.
And I'm Dave.
And we will be your tour guides for this deep dive of John Boorman's 1981 expressionist chivalric epic fantasy, Excalibur.
Nice. I came close. I said mythological fantasy epic.
Yeah.
So we were right in
It's
there.
definitely epic fantasy.
Yeah,
like
can be nothing else. And honestly, if you Google like best King Arthur movies, this is the best. And if you Google like what are the best Swords and Sorcery or fantasy movies or whatever, this makes everyone's top 10.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, this is a really interesting movie, and it's but it's consistently comes up when you're looking at this genre. It comes up a lot, and it's hugely influential. I had never seen this before, but going back when we were deep diving like the Zack Snyder movies, this movie is such a huge influence on him, and so that kind of put it on my radar. And then like I noticed Guy Ritchie talk about it, and like and several other
like the Lord of the Rings movies owe a lot to this, and I'd say the Game of Thrones
definitely
books and show.
It was a big influence on sort of Gen X directors, I think.
Because we were all kids when this was out in 81. I mean, I obviously when this came out I was a toddler, but I watched this a bunch of times when I was, during the late 80s and early 90s. This was one of those movies that the cable channels had licensed, and they would just rerun it. And so I have watched this movie a dozen times, chopped up into 1,000 pieces, right? Just 20 minutes, 30 minutes at a time. And I always love it when I get to those amazing scees. I'm not going to jump the shark quite yet. But there are certain scenes in this movie that just stick in my head forever.
I probably know some of. I can tell what some of them would be.
And
for
it's
sure.
a long bastard. It felt long, but it felt like long good.
Yeah. Okay. Because I was wondering how this movie held up for you as someone that was super into it as a kid.
Yeah, so sometimes when you love something as a young person and then you revisit it as an adult, I mean, I haven't seen this movie in 25 years, and that's like what an old guy says. But no, seriously, 25 years, I was a kid, and so I liked it. I loved it back then, and I say I really like it now. It's good. It's got some moments that feel old as fuck, and that's okay. But it also has some moments that feel timeless. Yeah.
Well, I think usually you don't like these sort of stylized performances. Like this is very Royal Theater kind of.
Yeah, but that's the thing I know about myself, and having done this podcast for 70 odd episodes. Anything even remotely Shakespearean, I seem to like.
Okay. So it's...
And all of these actors are like traditionally trained Shakespearean theater performers.
Like basically he just cleaned out kind of all of the Irish stage actors that were available, and people that went on to, have big careers like Liam Neeson and,
Helen Mirren.
They were just doing like small time theater at this point.
Yeah.
No real movie stars. Like
there's like a slew of knights in this movie, like who got knighted later in not the knights in Excalibur, but like real life knights. Who got knighted as like they're like heritage people for English or British theater. And so that tells you about the quality of the cast.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it is. Yeah, it's kind of a bunch of people's first movie, or their first. Like Patrick Stewart said, it was his first major film.
Yeah, and he's cool in this. I really like him.
I love this period of Patrick Stewart, because this is around the same time as Dune also.
Oh yeah, Gurney Halleck.
And he's like his hair isn't even white in this. Like he's bald, but he's got like a dark circle of black hair around his head.
Yeah, he looks awesome here. This movie, just some of the stats, is it was made for $11 million, which at the time was a big budget movie. And it was considered a commercial success, making over $34 million. In this day and age, in our modern times, you have to like almost triple your money because of all of the amount they put into advertising and all of that.
Right.
But back in the 80s, tripling your money was a smashing success.
Yeah.
That was huge. And of course, it had huge critical success. It won lots of minor awards. It didn't win an Oscar or anything, but it won like Cannes, various things. You know, it was pretty well received.
That doesn't quite match up with what I've seen, because this is a movie. This is a very divisive movie. Okay. There's a lot of negative criticism on it
from the 80s.
From the 80s, like if you watch like the Siskel and Ebert episode, this is a 2 thumbs down. Roger Ebert said it's a feast for the eyes and a famine for the mind.
That's interesting because they're terrible critics. I don't generally agree with them.
No, they're very good critics.
No, they give 2 thumbs up to things like batteries not included, and then 2 thumbs down to this. Come on,
I didn't like this movie.
Oh man, it's a good movie.
It's a significant movie. That's what I would say about it. I thought this was a really tough sit. This was a hard movie to watch.
Okay, interesting.
But I mean, there's a lot to like about it, but just in general, yeah, this doesn't do it for me.
I guess it's the subject matter. I'm really into this sort of thing. I love the Arthurian legend. I think it's awesome. And
I mean, it's very important. Like the Le Morte d'Arthur's Sir Thomas Malory's book is sort of the beginning of popular fiction. It's like the first like best-selling novel, essentially.
Yeah.
So this is like for Western literature, for Great Britain or whatever, for English literature, this is a hugely important story. And the movie is very faithful, really, to Malory's text.
And that might actually be one of its downfalls, is that it was so faithful to the book, because it's not peppy, it's not quick, and it has different acts, like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, that are very much they feel self-contained almost. This is definitely long form storytelling.
Yeah. Well, and it's condensing what is a massive book. The audiobook's 34 hours long.
Nice.
And the book often comes in 2 volumes, so it's this huge text. And it's
Did you listen to the audiobook?
I couldn't get through it.
Oh, did you start it though?
I started it, yeah. And it's very...
you used a credit on this bad boy?
No, I got it Libby. I got it from the public library.
Oh, man. I should explore that.
It's pretty cool. Pay taxes. Yeah. Libby is pretty cool. You can check out books from the library. It's, someone else may have it. That's the thing about the library.
Finite licenses.
Exactly. So someone had it when I went to go check it out, but I put a hold on it, so I'd be the next person. And then when they returned it, I got it.
Oh, nice. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely check out Libby, and you can have kind of unlimited library cards. It's the good part of socialism.
Oh, like unlimited library cards for like different.
Yeah, because I have like the Multnomah County Library and the Fort Vancouver Regional Library.
Can you register for them on Libby?
Uh-huh.
Oh, that makes it easy.
Yeah, you don't have to go get library cards.
Okay, I was going to say, because I'm not driving. Driving 30, 40 minutes to get a library card.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But maybe we should stop our preamble and roll for initiative. Yeah.
2.
I got a 5.
Man, I've been rolling bad the last 3 episodes.
Okay, so my first up is, this probably wasn't on your radar, but the Cinerama Theater in Seattle was formerly owned by Microsoft co-founder Paul Allen, and he passed away, and so it was sort of hanging out in limbo, and people were not sure if it was going to reopen. Nice. It's one of only 3 Cinerama theaters that are left in the world. Wow. The other one being the Dome in Los Angeles, and then there's one in London. The Seattle International Film Festival bought the Seattle Cinerama, so it is going to reopen, and that's a great old movie theater right in downtown Seattle. That's where I saw Blade Runner 2049, and there's only 3 of these screens left. Like, these are important movie theaters. So this is very, very good that this place has been bought by someone that's going to take care of it.
Glad to hear it. So that's that's interesting. So I've got some little less important news here. Okay. I've got an update on One Piece live action adaptation.
Oh, okay. It's been a minute since I've heard anything about it.
Yeah, so they put out some press. They did a poster teaser. They on the bottom of the poster it says One Piece coming to Netflix in 2023. Okay. So it's released this year. And they show pictures of all the actors for not just the main crew, but also the antagonists for the first season. And so that's pretty cool. The poster shows you Luffy, but you don't get a face shot. You get him from behind with his straw hat and everything. And you get to see like the front of their ship, the first ship, the Going Merry.
Okay.
And it's really cool looking.
And they built like big sets because I've seen some of the production footage or pictures.
They put a lot of money into this. This is a big ticket production. Oda Sensei said that he's very pleased with the production, and he has emphasized that he has the final say before it's released. And he had a lot of positive things to say about this and how it's going. He said, given his age and how long it takes to make a live action adaptation of something, he thinks that this is going to be the definitive version in live action. Obviously, the manga and then the anime are their own beast. But as far as movie or TV adaptations, this is the one because he's had a lot to do with it.
That's cool.
And so that's really a positive thing to see from him because you always hate it when a creator licenses their stuff out and it doesn't, and then they're not happy with the product.
Yeah, and it's very rare that like a Western adaptation of an anime or manga product is handled well.
Yeah, he actually comments on that. He said that a couple of things. He said that, first of all, the way that movies and TV are made in Japan versus how they're made in the West is very different. And so there's a lot of growing pains there in order to stay closely connected. But he also said that there was initially some doubts whether a Western company could do an adaptation of One Piece and have it be good. Yeah. But now he's sold. He's past all of that. Okay. And he thinks it's going to be great.
Well, that's cool.
I like that he addressed all the elephants in the room.
Yeah, no, I like that too. I'm looking forward to watching that.
For sure.
And since you get to start this at the ground floor,
it's not 1,000 episodes in.
Yeah, exactly. Like it just feels much more accessible. And then, if you fall in love with it, then you can go down that endless rabbit hole that is the anime.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I watched a couple of 100 episodes at least, but I still am a neophyte.
Yeah, those shows are like that.
All right, so what you got?
My next one is Dolph Lundgren has joined the Witcher universe.
Ooh.
This got reported by a Swedish news outlet that I'm not going to try and butcher the name of. And he revealed, anyway, he was doing an interview, that he was heading down to South Africa to start shooting a Witcher spinoff.
Yes.
Which I guess this is based around a group of thieves called the Rats, who are going to be introduced in this upcoming season of The Witcher.
Okay.
And they're sort of major characters in the book, which this season 3 is based on.
Okay.
And Netflix is looking to expand that Witcher universe, and so this is going to be one of the mini spin-offs.
Okay. Well, I'm game. I think it's good. I've liked everything so far.
Did you watch? I haven't watched the anime.
Oh, I didn't watch the anime, but I did watch the prequel thing.
Oh, did you watch? Yeah, was it any good?
It was good, yeah.
Okay.
I don't think it was as good as the main series, but I liked the casting, and it was
it had a really strong cast, but then there was pretty bad reviews for it.
Yeah, it was just all right.
Okay. You got anything else?
Yeah, and speaking of mega franchises, I just wanted to touch back on John Wick.
Oh yeah,
because someone from the movie studio or whatever
from Lionsgate.
Yeah, Lionsgate did he was at a press conference and someone hit him up with interview questions, and he said that he says we're now moving across that franchise, not just in the AAA video game space, but looking at a regular cadence of spin-offs. Television is really growing the universe, and a steady cadence of a franchise that there's a clear appetite for by the audience. So he talks a little bit about Ballerina. He talks about the Continental,
right.
And he also said Lionsgate has fully greenlit John Wick 5 whenever Keanu and Chad are ready to go.
Yeah.
If they become ready to go, but there's pressure to do it. But they want. He said these movies are really hard on everybody, so he knows that they need time to relax and to heal and to take a breath, get a story in mind, and then come back to it when they're ready.
Yeah.
But regardless, there's going to be a big video game. There's going to be multiple spin-offs. Basically, this is Lionsgate's golden ticket. They're going to be running with the John Wick flag and expanding it on TV, and multiple movies, like not just Ballerina. There's more in the works.
Yeah. Anytime you see an interview with someone from Lionsgate, they say John Wick 5. And anytime you see an interview with Chad Stahelski or Keanu Reeves, they're like, we're ready to let John Wick rest. So,
like I've seen Keanu say that after his piece in Ballerina, he won't be playing John Wick again. But I don't know how true that is.
I hope it's true. I mean,
it did end really well.
It got a really tidy ending. The first movie is sort of a standalone, and then, and then 2, 3, 4 make a trilogy. And I'm very happy with how it ended. I'm happy to continue in that world and see more stories.
Oh, yeah.
But I don't want it to be like where we are with the Fast and the Furious.
Oh, on 10 with you're just wondering why.
And they just before 10 even came out, they announced that they were basically spreading 10 out into another trilogy.
Yeah. It's like it's the beginning of the end.
Yeah, and it's like I don't want that for John Wick.
No, and I don't think that Keanu and Chad will let that happen.
It doesn't seem like it. It seems like they are very precious with the character and the universe, and they don't want to run it into the ground.
But I'm really interested in seeing like a young Winston.
Yeah,
and I'm interested in all of these other, like, give me a whole thing about the tracker.
That's true. I mean, because we just barely got introduced to that character.
And give me some like cool like Japan stuff. Like there's a whole mythos there. Like there's just so much to explore. And the Ruski Roma.
Yeah. That's what Ballerina is going to be.
It's going to be awesome. So I'm in it for this franchise.
Yeah, totally. So my third piece and final one is Tony Hawk, of all people, somehow leaked out on a podcast that Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross were doing the score for the upcoming Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles movie.
That's dope.
And so then, because he mentioned it on a podcast, then it had to be addressed and confirmed. And so, Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross of Nine Inch Nails are doing the score for the Ninja Turtles movie. And they actually, they do quite a bit of film score work, and they're exceptional composers. I think they're really good. So this movie started out as something I wasn't overly excited about, and has kind of keeps getting more and more interesting. Because also Jeff Rowe, who was the co-director of The Mitchells versus the Machines, which was an animated movie that came out during the pandemic lockdown time and was incredible. Like it's a very, very good movie, is directing this. And it's got a very all-star cast with Paul Rudd and Jackie Chan and Giancarlo Esposito and Post Malone and Ice Cube, and just like it's got a lot of talent behind it, and it's looking more and more like it's actually going to be really good.
Nice. I mean, I don't know if I'll see this in the theater, but I'm
Paramount Plus. You have you can wait for it to come to Paramount Plus.
Yeah, I'm totally down.
Speaking, I rewatched Dungeons and Dragons again since it dropped on Paramount Plus.
What do you think?
That's just a good movie.
Yeah.
That's a fun time.
I talked to a lot of people, and everyone I talked to that saw it was like, "Yeah, that was good. That was fun." I didn't hear anyone that didn't like it. All right. So how about podcast fuel? What do we got?
Our podcast fuel, since we're digging into Arthurian myth, which is so important to the identity of England, I wanted an old, established English beer, and so I brought in Old Speckled Hen in the Tallboy Nitro cans. It's an English pale ale, just 5% ABV. It's a full, smooth flavor that's easy to drink, rich amber color, and superb fruity aromas, complemented by a delicious blend of malty taste, toffee, and malt combined with bitterness on the back of the tongue to give a balanced sweetness. This is like one of my go-to. If you have Old Speckled Hen on Nitro, I'm probably ordering that when I come in your pub. I just enjoy these old British beers.
Yeah, this is a really good beer. I like old British styles as well. Mm-hmm. It's a tried and true. You can order an old British beer and you'll be happy with it. They don't fuck around.
No, they don't. They take tradition rather seriously there.
All right, let's go ahead and take a break and then come back with our main segment.
Welcome back, divers. Let's dive into Excalibur, 1981, directed by John Boorman. An epic retelling of the Arthurian myths spanning from the reign of Uther Pendragon to Arthur's death in battle at the hands of his son Mordred, and through the stories of the Sword and the Stone, the rise of Camelot, the tragedy of Lancelot and Guinevere, and the quest for the Holy Grail.
Yeah, this movie has it all.
I had normally I can make a really tight synopsis, but I was like, it's 5 stories and I can't do a synopsis for each of them. So
they could have cut the Holy Grail plot line.
It's pretty important.
Yeah, I guess so. But I mean, this movie is an epic. It's huge in scale. That's the point. Sometimes there's
a whole lot of movie. It's
sometimes they belabor belabor origin stories of side characters and stuff, but that's okay because I like them.
Yeah, like Percival.
Yeah, Percival's. I like,
but Percival ends up being important. You need
Percival's
all that.
My favorite Knight of the Round Table.
Is he really?
Yeah, he's easily my favorite.
He's one of the standout performances in the movie for sure, and he has one of the best arcs because you get him from being like
a peasant,
street urchin, to being like the knight of the Round Table, like the guy that's holding the whole thing together. Yeah,
when Arthur's down in the dumps, Percival's carrying the flag.
Yeah,
but his brother Kay never gives up either.
No,
I love Kay.
Kay is good, and Kay reminds me of the Cobra Kai guy. He looks a lot like him, and I like Kay. I like the characters. There's a reason why people have been retelling this story since the 1400s. It's these are pretty solid stories.
Moderately decent for 600 years.
Yeah, exactly. And I love Kay. Kay has that split moment where he's going to take credit for drawing the sword from the stone.
No.
And that's definitely in the text. Where Kay is sort of like, I did it, and he's like, no, it was Arthur. He doesn't he immediately feels bad for stealing credit from his brother.
He has a good heart. So he can't, because Arthur's just a little bastard boy. Mm-hmm. So
so very well, that is a difference because Arthur's already a knight in the book at that point.
Yeah.
So there is some minor differences, but I think it makes a better story if he's not yet a knight when he pulls the sword out. Mm-hmm. Which, we're in our storytelling segment already, I think.
So, I like that this is based on the historical source material. Mm-hmm. It does take some liberties. They make Merlin a lot more of a central figure.
Yeah.
And I think that's fine. Sometimes it's a little meandering because it's based on a historical thing.
Yeah.
It's 5 novels, because people nowadays, they want a story to just be tight and bookended real fast. But back in the day when there's no movies and books were the thing, you want to savor that. You want to chew on it, long form.
Yeah. Well, and in the way it's written, it's almost like its influences, it doesn't have literary influences, right? Because popular literature doesn't exist. So it's almost biblical sounding in the way it's written. And because that was probably what that was the bestseller before Le Morte d'Arthur came along, was the Bible. So like that was how people were used to reading.
Yeah, I like that this movie isn't just an action and adventure movie. It tells stories about character motivations. It deep dives into these relationships that they have, and it takes the time to let characters develop and breathe. I like that.
And so I think Boorman and also Rospo Pallenberg he wrote the adaptation, and then Boorman wrote the screenplay or whatever. I think they do a really good job of taking what is such an unwieldy piece of literature, and actually, this is a long movie, but they cut the story down to the core, right, and get to the moments that you need to have in it. I think they actually do a very admirable job doing that.
And they also include just some really spectacular dialogue, some amazing one-liners. I like how it's sort of pseudo-Middle Ages, but it's also somewhat Shakespearean. There's a little bit of Renaissance festival in there for you. But I mean, what came first, chicken or the egg? I mean, I think the Renaissance fairs were copying this.
Yeah. Oh, that's probably true. There's a PBS that has a pretty good documentary about this movie, and Boorman was talking about how thematically the story is set at kind of the end of the pagan era and the beginning of Christianity. But visually, it's coded much later. Like, it's much more medieval knights instead of what would have been more like Roman time.
Yeah, period. I have that in my visuals section, how it says that it's set in the Dark Ages. That's what it says in the intro, but it's actually reminiscent of the Middle Ages. And I guess this was a deliberate decision by Boorman because he wanted it to be visually appealing to a modern audience. Because at that time period, if they were Roman, it would have had a very stylized look. There's multiple Romanized retellings of Arthur.
There's that 2004 movie
that happens in the British Isles and in the edges of the empire. Yeah, that's a pretty good one, actually.
I like that movie too. And Boorman said, like, he felt like trying to make it actually look like the time period rather than people's ideas of the Knights of the Round Table would be a mistake, because he felt like people have a picture in their head when they read these stories of what a knight is, and trying to make it realistic to the time period when it would be set it would cause a dissonance in the audience.
Well, it's interesting because it was written in a time period in the Middle Ages when knighthood was a thing, and they were talking about people a long time ago at that time.
Right.
And they were literally talking about a time period when knighthood as an institution did not exist.
Right, exactly.
So there were no knights. It's like Jedi. Like we're talking about a long time ago. There were no Jedi.
And that's sort of, this happens a lot in cinema and literature. Like that wrestling with, are you trying to make something realistic is a losing battle a lot of the time. So I think by doing it the way he did, it's more iconic.
Yeah, and he fantasies it up a bit. Like, they have late Middle Ages full plate, which was not a thing even in the 1400s. I mean, there was plate, but it was more like brigandines and coats of plates or a jack. The full on, like a full globo style or a hound skull, all of these types of armors that you see in this movie are later period. They're 1500s, 1600s. But then he adds like spikes and stuff to it, and like big fat domed rivets and stuff intentionally, and that's pretty cool because it looks neat and it looks stylized. And in the museums, there are examples of like grotesque armors that did have spikes and stuff. But by and large, it was very rare. And that was in the first act when they were all wearing the darkened armor.
Yeah.
Later in the second and third act, when they have the shining armor, all the spikes are gone.
Yeah. The armor, since I think we've just kind of slid into visuals.
Sure,
probably.
yeah.
Yeah. So the armor, Terry English, it was the armorer. And they brought him on initially to make 14 suits of armor. Okay. And it just spiraled.
Make more.
Yeah, because eventually they decide all the extras need to be in armor, and we need multiple suits of armor for the principals as well.
Yeah.
Because everyone has like 3 stages of armor. They have their gleaming armor for when they're good and have pure motivations and good mental health and everything. And then they have like their dark armor. Like when Arthur fights Lancelot, he's wearing his black armor.
Yeah.
Because he's a little off his nut at that point in the story. And then like they also have their battle damaged armor from the end of the movie when the knights are sort of past their prime.
Yeah.
And so
it's all beat up and tore up.
Yeah. And so like,
I mean, Lancelot goes through a journey with his gear.
I love Wild Man Lancelot from the end.
Yeah,
but it's...
I mean, middle period Lancelot with no clothes, that's...
He's a hunk. Yeah.
As Steve Brule would say.
But so, it just spirals out of control because one suit of armor for each principal character just isn't enough.
I mean, I own more than one suit of armor.
Yeah, exactly. And so Terry English, bless his heart, he's the sole guy, and he made just buttloads of armor, over 100 suits of armor.
I bet he made bank.
Yeah, probably. He's probably a huge chunk of that budget. And the Lancelot armor is on display in one of the British museums. I forget which one. It's a museum of armor and things like that.
I think it's in the Tower of London, in the central tower, the White Tower, I think it's called.
Yeah.
The one that has all the armor. I went through that in April. So.
Okay. Yeah. So I mean, that's pretty cool. The Lancelot
it's
armor
legit.
made the cut there.
Yeah, and it's English style armor, so it makes sense.
This is, I mean, cutting back to what Roger Ebert said, it is a feast for the eyes. Visually, this movie is just gorgeous. Like, there's just so many iconic, beautifully framed images in this movie.
Like the image of the Lady of the Lake.
Oh yeah,
holding
gorgeous.
the sword aloft. It's so perfect.
Yeah, that's so good. I was thinking of Percival when he's looking at the Holy Grail, and it's sort of like this is happening in his mind almost, and he's like in framed with the drawbridge of a castle with the Grail kind of up on a pedestal in front of him, and I was like, oh, that's a poster. Like, that's just beautiful.
Yeah, there's a lot of absolutely stunning shots that they did, and I think that they hold up. Like, the visuals of this movie really hold up, and they used old school stuff like camera trickery and whatnot. Some of it doesn't really hold up. It looks a little cheesy. Like in speaking of the Lady of the Lake, after Arthur breaks the sword, and then the Lady of the Lake hands it back to him fixed.
Yeah, she
looks like a hologram superimposed. She doesn't look like a lady in the water. It doesn't look right.
I mean, it
looks weird.
It looks weird. I don't find that cheesy. Like, I don't think. I don't hold the limitation of the technology of the era against them.
I think that it's just not all of it was perfect. It was pretty good though.
I think Alex Thompson's cinematography is gorgeous in this movie. They film basically mostly in the Irish countryside, and much like us here in the Pacific Northwest, it's always raining in Ireland.
Yes.
So like those beautiful sunlit scenes, like what we don't see is just the hours and hours of waiting with people in full costume, standing around in the woods, waiting for a sunbreak so we can shoot Arthur and Guinevere's wedding. Yeah, you know what I mean? And the scenes are just gorgeous. Like that sunlight coming in through the trees and glinting off of their armor, you can't fake it. So you have to sit there and wait for those sunbreaks to get those shots, and it pays off.
Yeah, it looks really amazing.
That's when we talk about the big budget. That's another, paying everyone to stand around and wait for the sun to come out in Ireland. That's another big draw in this budget.
They must all be union.
The film industry is a heavily union industry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think that's all I have for visuals.
My last one, and this I wrestled with if this falls under themes and motifs or if it falls under a visual. The green light to represent magic.
Sure.
Anytime Excalibur is out, there's a green light shining on it. Or
if there's fog and it's like dragon fog, they just put green light on the fog.
Yeah. If Merlin is going to do a monologue, the green light is there. Mm-hmm. When Percival has his encounter with Wild Lancelot that happens later in the movie, the green light is shining under the river. You can see the green light glowing there. And so that's such a simple thing, and you watch the behind the scenes and it's literally just like a can light with a green film.
Green film, yeah.
But it's it clues you in, subliminally. Anytime you see that green light, there's something significant happening. Mm-hmm. And that's almost like a stage technique, right? You would do that in a play also.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And I just think it's a really effective visual that I like. And then it gets used. I see other filmmakers using that green light. Obviously Zack Snyder used it a ton in the Justice League movie.
Oh God. Yeah.
And so it's very impactful. It made a big.
Yeah, Justice League owes a lot to Excalibur.
Oh, everything to it. Batman is King Arthur, Lancelot is Superman, Percival is the Flash, Alfred is Merlin. I haven't quite got every character figured out, but
it's pretty close.
It all lines up. It's all planned.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty cool. I'd like to see. You should write an editorial about that. Or just a tweet thread.
Yeah, where I start breaking these things down. Yeah, there's already kind of Reddit pages devoted to analyzing this.
There's no reason you can't give your hot take on it.
Yeah, I should get in there. I just like to lurk in Reddit, though. I don't like to participate.
No, on our Twitter.
Oh, okay.
You can steal those filthy Redditors' ideas and give your own take on them.
Do we have a subreddit?
No. Subreddit would necessitate a lot of people wanting to discuss this topic.
That's a thing we're not on.
We're not on Reddit. I am on Reddit, but not for podcast stuff. Okay. Anyway, so let's talk about audio.
Yeah.
The movie's score, which was composed by Trevor Jones,
mm-hmm.
it's awesome. It's haunting. It's beautiful. Yeah. It gives a great sense of atmosphere.
Right.
I feel like it's tailored to the story really well.
Mm-hmm.
It's really great. I think that the music is an important part of this movie.
It definitely is. I don't think it's as much his score as it is the classical pieces that he lays in
huge, there.
Yeah. Like Carl Orff's Karamina Burana. That just gets stuck in my head anytime I hear it.
As soon as it was started and they're mm-hmm. riding, I look over at Carrie. I'm like, oh yeah.
Oh, that when they're riding off to face Mordred at the end, and mm-hmm. that song is playing, and it's not a GoPro. I don't know. There must be just a massive camera. He's probably not on a horse. Arthur's probably not on a horse. He's on a truck with a camera mounted, and he's making the horse action.
You could tell it was him moving like he's on a horse.
Yeah.
You could feel that.
Yeah. Now you would do it with a GoPro.
Yeah, you'd just be on a horse.
But this would be a massive, a 35 millimeter camera on some sort of big rig that he's riding
on a track, and this guy's in the background.
Exactly, yeah. But that scene is so good. Like that's another, and it's another one of those. They're like riding through like an apple orchard or a plum orchard or something like that, and the trees are blossoming, and the Orff music is playing, and it's just like, oh, this is incredible. Like this is like why people love this movie.
For the eyes.
Yeah. And he also he pulls from Wagner as well. He's got a few Wagner pieces that drop in there.
Yeah.
There's an opera about Percival, so you might as well use his song from the opera. Like there's a reason why these pieces of classical music became classics.
Yeah, it's just the movies. The music is really good. They use a lot of sound effects that seem like they were added after the fact.
Yeah,
dropping, especially in the battle. Every battle, every sword swing, you hear a clanging.
Yeah,
the most iconic sound bite is the sword being pulled.
Yeah,
it just. Not just from the stone, because that's kind of a grinding sound, but every time they draw Excalibur, it's just like shing.
Yeah.
Like it's like so powerful. Everybody feels like that's what drawing a sword sounds like. I have a sword. It doesn't actually sound like that.
Yeah,
but it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is. That's sort of like how, like you said, there wasn't knights in the 2nd century or whenever this would have happened. Swords don't make that sound, but that's the sound they make in fantasy. Like that's the sound you imagine they make. And
on a Satyricon record.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Oh man, we're in the right section to talk about. There's a band called N&DDDtM, right?
Oh yeah, from the Charm of Making.
The Charm of Making. Yeah, I was like, that's a band name.
Yeah, like, when she started saying it, I was like, or he's saying it and she's repeating. I'm like, oh, N&DDDtM. Yeah, that's a good black metal band. And I was like, damn, they went obscure for their name. That's pretty cool.
Oh yeah. Well, we didn't mention it that this is the start of a 5-part fantasy sword and sorcery series.
On the pod, not the movie. It's not a Fast and Furious situation.
But we're gonna find a lot of heavy metal references over the course of these 5 movies.
Oh yeah, so many movies have so many metal nerds are fantasy nerds as well, myself included. So yeah, this is big. Like Excalibur is it's foundational for fantasy and metal, and fantasy is foundational for metal. So you can't really get away with it. There was one soundbite that I wanted to call out that I actually found to be ridiculous and distracting. Early in the movie, when Uther, this is pre-Arthur, his father Uther is fighting in the battle, and he has a battle axe. Every time he hits someone with it, it makes ting like a little bell. I'm just like, dude, it would have made like a sickening crunch,
right,
or a clank. There would be no ting. I was just like, really? One little ting every time he hits a guy?
That's funny.
It was like silly.
But it's very good armor. It doesn't.
Oh yeah,
it's
magical armor, I bet.
Oh, actually, if he's fighting whatever the Duke of Cornwall, I think he does have magical armor.
Okay.
So that's probably why.
They're just letting you know this.
They're
is
letting
very
you know.
Special.
Yeah, he has special armor.
Would you rather have a magic sword or magic armor?
I mean, it depends. Do you value not getting cut or hurting other people more?
Not getting cut.
Yeah, magical armor is probably the way to go.
I think that you could, a guy with a magical sword, you could have like 50 peasants hold down and take out. But if you get stabbed, you're done.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, we'll save that for performances because there's many people. But I wanted to talk about Uther a little bit.
That's going to be the longest piece of the movie. The podcast.
Do we want to get into the themes and motifs?
Yeah, let's go ahead. There's a bunch of them.
Yeah, this
is an epic.
To me, the biggest one is about that transition from the pagan times to the Christian times.
Okay.
I think that is just like that was the one that stuck with me the most. And I think maybe it's just because steeped in the pagan imagery, right? So like Merlin is an Odin type figure.
Sure.
He's usually preceded by those two ravens. He's got that same sort of Odin-y way of speaking in riddles and everything.
Oh, yeah.
And he, when Odin is the wizard archetype, right? Gandalf is also based on Odin.
Oh yeah, the dialogue is it's so snappy and cutting. It's exactly like Gandalf's performance.
Yeah, and so but the knights, they're all very steeped in like Christian iconography, like especially like Lancelot is very Christian coded, and Merlin has like a whole monologue about this, about the time of the many gods being over. And,
there are other worlds. This one is done with me.
Yeah, and so you know, I just find that really interesting because it's such a Europe, even in that time period, had to sort of do a reckoning with its past, right? Where Christian Europe had to somehow Christianize its own history in order to connect to it. And the story is, you know, it's doing a lot with that. And I find that dichotomy really interesting.
Yeah, I think that's pretty cool, and that kind of hits on the. I feel like faith is an important theme in the movie.
Certainly, yeah.
And faith in early on, it's faith in Merlin.
Yeah.
Uther and Arthur put too much faith in Merlin, and later they put faith in the Round Table.
Yeah.
It's really and in faith in one another.
Yeah.
And this movie is really about how they invest in things and people. I also feel that there's a big theme here. You know, it's kind of the human story: love, loss, and betrayal.
Right.
That whole deal when you know, there's so many moments of human interaction where they're loving one another, people mourning their losses, and then of course people betraying one another. Guinevere and Lancelot, and of course Morgana, and all of this, and there's just there's a lot of this circular betrayal thing going on, and it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
lots very interesting.
Arthur and Uther both have that same problem of Merlin can do something for you. Magic always has a cost,
yes,
and they're never interested in the cost until after it's too late, right? Like
if these guys are D&D characters, they both have low wisdom.
Oh, for sure, they
make bad decisions and they don't think about the consequences.
Arthur doesn't. Old Arthur is pretty wise,
yeah,
but
he grew into it.
Yeah, but young Arthur is not, and Uther.
Never was,
and never gets old. You know?
Can we just admit Uther is a dirtbag?
Oh yeah, Uther is a rapist.
Bad dude. Yeah, that's straight up rape right there.
Yeah,
I mean, to cast an illusion to look like the other guy's husband, and then he goes in and oh man, that's no good.
That's not consensual.
That's not okay.
It is not okay. Uther, Gabriel Byrne gives a great performance, but Uther himself is a shitbag.
Yeah, the acting was amazing, and all of that, but that was some badness.
But then Arthur's big thing was when Merlin revives Lancelot, essentially with Guinevere's the power of her love or whatever.
Yes.
And Arthur just says like, whatever the cost. And then the cost is
her.
Is basically like they're going to be in love with each other.
Yeah.
Like that's the cost of it. They already were, but like they're not going to be able to resist it once we've bound their life forces together.
He was a perfect knight and then he lost it.
Poor Lancelot. Lancelot's a tragic character.
Yeah, he just becomes a crazy hobo.
I love crazy hobo Lancelot though. That's when he shows up with that mace at the
end. Yeah,
so good. What else you got? Symbolism wise, the Lady of the Lake and the Grail. We have just real classic iconography.
I think we have a lot of things that are symbolize different things like.
Yeah.
Excalibur, the sword, symbolizes power and destiny. I think
it's also a cross.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, like say when Lancelot and Guinevere lay together in the forest, they're like Adam and Eve in the garden. They're out there nude in the forest. And then, Arthur comes in and plants that cross in between them.
And there's like snake.
Oh, there's lots of snakes.
On.
Yeah.
And then I like how, the sword symbolizes power and nobility. Whereas when he fights both Lancelot and Mordred, they're using a spear.
Right.
Which, of course, we know a spear is what Longinus stabbed into Christ's side.
Right.
It's not a noble weapon. It's a common weapon. And so Arthur, being a true king, has a sword. I don't know. There's a lot you can read into it.
Yeah.
And obviously, this was written so long ago. It's all been said before.
Yeah.
But I think that those are not accidents.
No, there's no. There's really no accidents in this movie. It's all intentional stuff. Another one of the pagan ones I forgot to mention earlier was Percival has to hang from the gallows tree in order to find the Holy Grail. So it's a mashup of the pagan iconography. Odin hanging from the tree to get the secret of the runes.
Oh yeah,
but Percival hangs from the tree and then receives the Holy Grail. Like it takes that and puts the Christian iconography into the pagan iconography,
which was standard practice.
Yeah,
in the Middle Ages.
That's how Europe basically kept their history.
Christmas.
Totally, yeah.
All right, so you want to get into some performances?
Oh, let's do it. This will be a big one.
All right, so do we want to start with our favorites or just kind of go with the biggest roles?
I don't have them in the order of my favorites, so we can just round robin, go back and forth. Right.
So I'm going to start off with my favorite performance, which is Helen Mirren as Morgana.
Mwah. Oh yeah,
it's perfect.
So
she's such, especially by the end. She's just like the total goth, witch, wizard, sorceress. She's so amazing. And earlier on, she's a little more wholesome, and she's like Guinevere's friend and whatnot.
Yeah.
And then she just becomes like seductive and terrifying, and she brings real menace to the role.
Yeah.
And she betrays Merlin. I feel like Helen Mirren just nailed this. If that lady keeps it up, she's going somewhere.
Right? Dame Helen Mirren. So this is not a secret. She's one of my big celebrity crushes of all time. I love Helen Mirren. And she is... she steals the camera every time she's in a scene. Even when she's just in the... She's a lot of times... Merlin or Morgana will walk into the scene and they'll be out of focus in the background, but they're doing something.
It's very Shakespearean.
Yeah, and they're back there scheming. And like anytime she comes into the room, I'm like, there she is. What's she doing back there? Like I'm watching her while like Nigel Terry is Arthur monologuing in the front. I'm like, what's Morgana doing back there behind him?
Man, and then she ensorcels Arthur and lays with her own half brother.
That's biblical too.
That's darkness there. And of course the son Mordred.
Yeah.
This character is like she's sinister. She does taboo things. Young Davy was very much interested in what she was all about.
She gives confusing feelings.
Yeah, I feel a certain sort of way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's not
in this role. Is just perfect.
Yeah, she's not a wholly evil character. There actually isn't any wholly evil or wholly good character. This is a Shades
of Grey movie.
Yeah, for sure.
Except Guinevere. Come on, Guinevere.
What are you gonna do?
Your husband's best friend.
She had never met anyone else.
That's true. She never really had a chance.
She never.
Captain Jean-Luc Picard kept her locked up.
Yeah. The first party she ever got to go to, she goes and gives weed brownies to the new king,
and he wants to marry her.
And he wants to marry her. That's such a good. My next one will be Nigel Terry as Arthur.
Yes.
He's hilarious as teenage Arthur because Merlin basically lays it out like you'll you'll marry her and she'll betray you with your best friend. And Arthur's so like in love with her and Twitter pated. He just goes, so I do marry her. Like, and he just does not even register that Merlin fully tells him the betrayal is coming.
He never has a true-born son or daughter.
No. So Nigel Terry, it's a weird performance, I feel like, but it's no small thing to play a character from being a teenager into being an old man.
I think he brings a lot of, there's always a sense of idealism in Arthur. Like, even when he's at his lowest low, he wants to find hope.
Yeah.
He always wants to be a true knight.
Yeah. He is, he gets off the path a couple of times, but he always has the best intentions. Yeah. And he actually grows into the role of Arthur very well. Like, I very much like him as the older Arthur when he gets the gang back together at the end and he goes and forgives Guinevere and brings her out of the nunnery and makes her queen again. And like, he kind of goes through to set things right after he's been an absentee king for some time. So yeah, Nigel Terry does an admirable job as Arthur.
Yeah, he did a really good job. When I first saw him in this, in this recent viewing, I was like, man, couldn't they have got like somebody a little more movie star-ish? This guy looks like a regular guy.
Yeah.
Like Lancelot looks more kingly, but I don't know. I guess that's they were just going with these British Shakespearean actors, like people that could deliver the lines, and he does a great job. Yeah,
and I think he needs to also be the Luke from A New Hope version of the character. He needs to play it all the way from A New Hope to The Last Jedi, all in one movie, basically.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and he manages it. He manages to do it. Who's your next one?
I'm gonna go with Liam Neeson as Gawain. I really enjoyed that character. It's not one of the biggest screen time characters.
It isn't,
but I really enjoyed this performance. I feel like he had this youthful innocence going on. There was a lot of chemistry with the other actors on the screen. Yeah. And every time he's on the screen, you notice it. He's really, the camera loves him. He does an amazing job. I thought that this was a breakout performance for him.
Yeah. And it really was. This is the start of his career. I know that there's cut scenes because I know he had more scenes with Morgana, like their relationship is more fleshed out, because I think that those two characters are married in the book, I believe. And so there's a lot on the cutting room floor when it comes to Liam Neeson, and it's kind of,
we need like a 4.5 hour version.
Oh really? Like it could be a mini series. Let's just spread it out over several nights. That'd be dope. Yeah. So my next one, Nicolas Cage as Lancelot.
That's great.
Superman to Arthur's Batman. He is the knight. Like, he's the shining knight. And I love the stuff with him early on where he's holding the bridge basically and waiting for his worthy opponent to come along. Yeah. And then I love Wild Man Lancelot from the end where he's sort of like,
you don't like trifling ass Lancelot? Middle version.
I don't like I stabbed myself in the woods because I felt so guilty, Lancelot. I don't mind Lancelot after he's had his near-death experience and he succumbs to the temptation because he can't help it. At this point, that was magic induced. When he was just out in the woods feeling sorry for himself and not showing up to the duel.
The round table or the duel.
Yeah, so like, because Guinevere is going to have to get represented by Percival, who's not even a knight yet.
And he gets knighted on the spot, so it's all good.
And once you get knighted, you magically have the skills and abilities of a knight.
I mean, once you're a knight, you're a knight forever.
That's true.
Don't take that shit away.
That's true. Yeah. So anyways, I'm a little down on Lancelot when he stabs himself in his sort of guilt fit in the woods.
That was his Trent Reznor moment.
I hurt myself today. But you can't show up to a duel after you stabbed yourself through the side. You're not going to give us your strongest performance.
No, absolutely not.
Yeah, it's a bad move, Lancelot. But
right.
Wild Man Lancelot with the mace just comes in smashing fools.
Oh, yeah, and everyone's like, Lancelot. Yeah. They're so stoked.
Because he is the best among them.
Yeah, he's the best fighter.
And they all know it, yeah. So everyone's stoked when he comes back.
So I'm going to go with Nicole Williamson as Merlin.
Yeah, that's the other highlight.
He's just so good. I love the lines he delivers. Probably the best line is the one from To Live Is To Die that they use as the lyrics. When a man lies, he murders some part of the world.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, he delivers it with such gravity. Like, I love this Merlin. I want to commission someone to make me one of those wizards steel caps.
Yeah,
That's
I guess
so
you gotta.
cool.
Is Terry English still alive? I think he passed away just recently.
Yeah, but I know some world-class armorers. They could make that.
Okay, I've
They
definitely
even take a casting of my head.
I've heard you drop some Merlin quotes over the years that I didn't necessarily know were from this movie because I hadn't seen it.
This movie's so good.
And so, yeah, Nicole Williamson as Merlin is such a delightfully weird performance. He's a scene stealer. He's fun. He gets like the only jokes that are in the movie.
Yeah.
He's the comic relief.
He clowns on people, but he's also wise.
Yeah. That's just wizard stuff.
That's wizards.
That's how wizards do. Yeah. And the scenes with him and Helen Mirren together are especially strong. Like those are like the most engaging scenes because they're like the two people I feel that are the most into the world. Like they're the most, like they get it the most.
It's like, eye of newt and snake skin. That's all you've learned.
I'm a creature like you. She says. Yeah. Oh, it's
so good.
The life of a necromancer.
I love it that he describes himself as a necromancer. That's so badass.
Yeah. Who's next? Is it my turn?
Go ahead.
Paul Jeffrey as Percival.
Oh, yeah.
Percival comes in kind of in the middle of the movie and becomes the protagonist. And I think the movie starts clicking better
like in Act 2 is the Percival act.
Yeah, and he is a very good protagonist, and I didn't really have much in my mind when he first showed up. I didn't really think much of it, and then he ends up being the focus.
Yeah, like early on when you meet him when he's a kid and he's following Lancelot, and you're like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
And then he becomes a knight. He like grows into the spurs. He's
totally
he's awesome.
Yeah, and he's the only one. No one, because basically, when Liam Neeson, Sir Gawain accuses Guinevere, and Lancelot has to defend her honor, basically, and Lancelot doesn't show up. Basically, all the other knights are going to let her get killed.
Yeah, they don't want to fight Gawain.
They don't want to fight him, and
because
also
she's guilty, and they all know it.
Or they think it. Anyway, I think Lancelot not showing up is sort of confirmation that, they actually are banging, and that's why he didn't show up to this. And only Percival, who's not even a knight yet, is willing to go and stand for her. So, yeah, Percival ends up being a heavy lifter when it comes to knights.
Yeah, and then the last one on my list that we haven't listed out is, of course, Patrick Stewart as Leo de Grance. It's another side. It's a small role like Gawain, but it's great. He's he's Guinevere's father. He's one of the earliest bannermen for Arthur. He's there. He's a stalwart. He's a staunch dude. Yeah. I like it.
He's a beast in the. It's not. Is it a melee when they're on horseback? Yeah, it's not a joust.
It's weird because they call it a joust, and then people are striking each other with the flat of their lance. It's like, what the fuck, dude?
Yeah, but he's a beast in that one. When that tourney that he wins. I love, like we said earlier, I love this period of Patrick Stewart.
I just wish he had a pug.
Because he wears like a sweatband, and it's got has sort of like a little dangle in the back, and I was like, I wish that he had the full skullet like he does in Dune.
Yeah.
But yeah, Patrick Stewart is great. I had just a couple more. Gabriel Byrne as Uther. Very early performance from Gabriel Byrne. Just like all of these are early performances from these people. But he's really strong. Like, he's a creep, and he's a terrible king, and you don't feel bad when he gets killed as he's running through the woods. But I think he is one of the stronger performances in the movie. And then I guess my last little note was that Charlie Boorman, who's John Boorman's son, plays the young version of Mordred, Robert Addy playing the older version, and Charlie Boorman is Ewan McGregor's homie that he rides
down and all that.
He rides the motorcycles around with.
Yeah.
So I was like, when he showed up, and I was like, why is that name familiar? And it's like, oh yeah, like that's the motorcycle guy.
Yeah, I was looking up that, and I was like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, and then I mean, there's way more people, but we've covered all the ones I called out.
Yeah, my favorite is definitely Morgana and Merlin.
Oh, for sure.
Mean, and the thing is it's weird to choose
by a country mile. Like, it's not even close.
It's weird to choose the wizards when I'm like such a fan of knights and all that and chivalry, but the performances are just crushingly good.
Yeah.
And so it's hard not to, and they're both so charming and like mysterious and clever, and they're just great.
A dream to some, a nightmare to others.
I love, like Gandalf got his steez straight from Merlin.
That is so Gandalf-y, like the pitch change.
Oh yeah. I love it. And how he'll say things just that are sort of mysterious, but sort of like, I don't know, like and then he'll just like stop and he won't explain.
Yeah.
That's just, it's, the screenplay for Lord of the Rings is like straight influenced by this.
Oh, for sure.
All right. So now we get to the overview section where I ask you what worked for you and what was your personal highlight.
I'll start. My personal highlight, probably robbing you here, but it's the scenes with Merlin and Morgana together, particularly the one in Merlin's Undercroft, where she basically dupes him into giving her the charm of making, and it's just like she bests him at his own wizard game, so that when it's just perfectly timed, so when Arthur comes and stabs the sword into the earth in the garden, the sword stabs Merlin because she gets Merlin connected to the earth at that point.
Yeah.
Because when he talks about the dragon, he's talking about like the spirit of the earth.
Sure.
And so he's like, she gets him to hook up to the power, to the earth power.
Yeah.
And just in time for Arthur to stab him in the back, essentially.
Exactly.
And that gives her the edge to lock him up in the crystal. And like, I just like the way the two of them play the scene. It's like a stage play in the best kind of way, like not in the way that it's stilted, but in the way you're just watching this sort of 2-person show happen, and they're both totally locked in with each other and locked into the world. In the parlance of our day, they understand the assignment. They know exactly what they're supposed to do, and they fucking kill it. And the set is so cool.
It is really cool.
It's like a Masters of the Universe playset.
It
looks like what's underneath Castle Grayskull. and I just like that sequence is just perfect. Like that's for me the highlight of the movie. What's your personal highlight?
So you almost stole my personal highlight.
Okay.
Because I said here that Merlin and Morgana on screen together is just cinema masterful.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's awesome. I love how Morgana is so much more sinister than I remember her being as a kid. I totally approve of that. And then the actual scene, I actually chose the other half of their interactions when Merlin Shade visits Morgana and she recites the charm of making. He kind of tricks her.
Yeah, he visits her in a dream and dupes her into doing it.
And then she uses all of her power, and then she is withered, and she's an ancient and withered version of herself, and then Mordred attacks her and kills her. And I love that scene because it's a trick. He tricks her back. He screws her over, and these two are just so awesome. Like I just think that just the performances were magical, and so that was my particular scene that I liked the best.
Yeah, I'm totally on board with that, and I love it because it's set up much earlier on. Summoning the dragon's breath like that is very draining, because when Merlin did it the first time, he had to rest for 9 months. And so he gets Morgana to do it, and basically, like you said, he give out all of her energy. And then
this influenced D&D too, because there are spells, especially in 2nd edition, which came out right after this movie. There are spells like this, and several spells that wipe you out for days or weeks at a time after you cast them. And so it's a hugely influential like depiction of wizardry. I love it. So did you have other things that you would consider they worked for you?
So what worked for me, the cinematography, Alex Thompson's cinematography, and the visual storytelling are just incredible. Like this movie just totally works as would work as a silent movie, right? With just musical accompaniment and just watching it. Like, it's so iconic and visually rich. You could watch this without hearing the dialogue at all, and get the story. There's some real standout performances that we just talked about, particularly Nicole Williamson and Helen Mirren. Those performances have really stuck with me, and the music, the classical music, the Karamina Burana, particularly that scene where the knights are riding and that song is playing.
Yeah, that's a standout scene.
And it's just like, this is powerful. Like, this is cinema. Like,
this is what knights are all about.
Yeah, totally. It's such a great depiction, and it has remained like the image that people have in their head of this sort of thing comes from this movie. What about you? What was your what worked for you?
I mean, you said a lot of things that I could just echo. I mean, in particular, I love the dialogue. I love so many of the amazing one-liners. A lot of them from Merlin, some of them from Arthur. I feel this movie is just so ridiculously quotable. I loved how the classical music was pieced with certain parts to where it just added so much gravity to them. And I think that the cinematography was absolutely top notch.
Yeah.
It was filmed. It was shot so well. I think that that really made this something special, and it elevated it beyond simply a sword and sorcery movie. It made it
sure
artistic.
Definitely. I'm really glad that you said that, because I've been like kind of anxious about this all week, because I know so often you don't like these sort of stylized performances, and I was like, oh man, Dave's gonna have his childhood memory ruined, and he's gonna hate this movie, and it's gonna be sad because it's one of his favorites. And it didn't live up to his.
This is in the pantheon.
And so I was really like
Blade Runner and Excalibur.
I've been very anxious, like about how you react to this movie, and so I'm glad that you still like it. Like, it still holds up for you. Yeah.
Well, what didn't work for you?
What didn't work for me? So, what didn't work for me is that stylized dialogue, and I think a lot of times very wooden performances from a lot of these people.
Oh shit!
Like, I feel like,
how dare you?
Yeah, especially like the early young Arthur stuff, I find those scenes real cringe to get through. I know I always struggle with these things when you can tell something is a deliberate choice, but it just doesn't work for you.
Yeah.
Like, how do you judge that? Because it's like they're doing this is exactly what John Boorman wants them to do. I just don't like it.
Well, that's funny because that's some of the things that didn't work for me were deliberate choices.
Okay. The lack of a strong narrative drive is also a problem. It's like, it's similar to Mallory's text, which is very meandering and rambling and covers, a whole lot of time and it's not structured like a novel that just didn't exist yet.
Yeah.
And so
it's structured like a Bible.
Yeah. It's structured like a collection of stories that are thematically connected to each other. And the movie's structured that way, but that gives the movie a sense of it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't have a drive to it. So that made it, for me, even though I like components of it, it made it a tough sit to actually watch as a whole movie.
Okay.
So what about you? What didn't work for you?
So there were pretty much two things. So I'm a history nerd. Anybody who's listened to 70 episodes of this podcast knows that I do reenactment stuff, and I love armor. And
you were just knighted this past weekend or the weekend before.
Yeah, I was actually in my nerd club. I've been working on that for 15 years, believe it or not. Yeah, this is my 15th year of being in this.
Did it make you mad to see Percival get knighted so fast?
No, because everyone has a journey. It's right when it's right.
It's okay. That's a very diplomatic way to look at it.
No, it's fine. I'm happy with my journey and where it ended. And to all you guys out there who are like, "What the fuck's he talking about?" It's a medieval history club where you reenact fighting and pageantry and stuff. And getting your knighthood in the club is kind of like if someone was like a student of like karate or jiu-jitsu and they eventually got their black belt.
Yeah.
It's kind of like earning your black belt, but in medieval fighting. And so that's where I'm at. So I love armor. I love fighting. The combat, the actual fighting stage combat was just bad. But that's fine. At the time, we weren't used to a standard of super technical fighting like we are now.
Yeah.
Back then, it just wasn't a thing. People were swinging swords like baseball bats, and that's how it was.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I give it a pass for that.
So, and that is a deliberate choice in that you don't have professional fighters out there.
Yeah.
And Boorman...
There's like no Ray Parks in an armor suit.
Yeah. And Boorman really wanted to capture sort of unscripted, improvised fights so that it seemed chaotic like that.
And that's okay. I kind of give it a pass for that, but what I don't give a pass for is the lack of historical accuracy on the armor in particular and the costumes. This is some Ren Fair shit.
Yeah.
And the armor is not very historically accurate. It's hodgepodge. Like there's a helmet that's accurate from here paired with a set of spalders that are accurate from somewhere else, not even in the same century.
Right.
And so it's all, and I don't know why the armorer chose to do that, or what direction he was given. But that stuff was really rough for someone who enjoys historical accuracy. Yeah. Now, I normally, if I stick to my guns on historical accuracy, it ruins every movie for me.
Right.
So I try not to care too much about that. But this is a movie about knights, and they never look like knights from any
particular
period. If they were like, "Oh, we're gonna call it the Dark Ages," but this is 1650, I'd be like, "Okay, cool." That's fine. Call it the Dark Ages, but everyone is historically accurate for 1650. That would be fine. But it wasn't. It was like everything from like the 1200s to like 1600s. And it's crazy weird that they made that decision because none of this shit has changed. And they're all British. They all have access to the museums where you can see it all. Right. It's easy to find.
I wonder if because the demands on Terry English were so high. Like, you know, like how in the Star Wars cantina, there's a bunch of characters in there. Like there's a devil and a werewolf and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And it was literally
just other movies worth of gear.
It was just stuff like, they're like, we need more aliens. What do you have, Stan Winston, in your creature shop? And he's like, I've got a devil and a werewolf. They're like,
you mean a Deveronian?
Yeah, they're like, get them in here because we need more aliens. I think it probably was like, you know, I know we ordered 14 suits of armor.
We're going to need 280.
Yeah.
Or something stupid.
And he's like, oh, fuck, what do I have in the workshop? And just like bringing everything in.
Yeah, he just gets in there with a hydraulic press and just presses them out with a jig. Mm-hmm. Yeah, anyway, the other thing, and I could go on, but I like the movie anyway, so I look past that stuff. Uh-huh. The other thing is like exactly like you said, the slow pacing, and it was rambling and meandering. This is the same exact thing that will happen if you read the original unabridged Three Musketeers by Alexander Dumas. Mm-hmm. It's rambling. It's not tight. The story goes from here to there. It's real slow, and that's just how historical fiction is. Mm-hmm. It's slow, it's biblical, it's Shakespearean. None of it is real. It has more in common with a play than it does with a novel.
Yeah,
and neither of them have much in common with a 2023 action flick.
That's true.
And so I'm not going to say I fully give it a pass on either of those things, because both of them are kind of a letdown, but it wasn't that bad. I didn't ever stop and look at my phone.
Okay.
In the entire movie.
And there's some really cool armor in this.
Yeah, there are some really rad fantasy suits of armor.
Yeah.
Like
Uther's helmet with sort of like the rhino snout on it and the horns. Yeah. Like, that's pretty badass.
And Mordred, come on.
Oh, yeah.
He looks so cool. He's so grim. Like, he is like, he's so villainous.
It is, yeah. It's not grim because he's gleaming gold.
Yeah,
with like a cherub head.
Totally sinister. Like, you know, he's evil as fuck.
A grown man in that suit of armor is terrifying because
that's what I mean. Yeah,
it's so creepy. It'll like the baby, like the cherub face with the curly golden hair.
Yeah, I love the Mordred outfit. That just always stuck with me. How crazy evil he seemed.
I like the sort of the Dark Knight Arthur when he fights Lancelot, and he has the big shoulder wing things that kind of protect his neck. I don't know what those are called.
It's called the Wu-Tang suit.
To protect your neck. Yeah. What I mean, is there an actual name for those?
Those are just late period jousting spalders. I mean,
spalders.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And so they're literally to protect your face and neck from flying shards of wood.
Yeah. I mean, they look very practical. Yeah. Like they look like they would really screw with your peripheral vision because they're very tall.
But if you're just facing forward, it's all good.
Yeah. Anyways, I know I could tell like nothing in this movie is accurate at all. Like Lancelot's sort of Dragon Knight armor with the wings on the helmet.
Dude, I love that helmet. That shit is dope. That's the like John Aaron's helmet would be like.
You just gotta let go.
Yeah, you have just to let it go. This is fantasy.
It looks like a D&D book.
Exactly. This isn't historical fiction. This is fantasy.
Yeah.
You have to let it be fantasy. All right. So what's your final thoughts and your rating?
I struggled with what to rate the movie because I'm well aware of how influential it is, and there is, there's some just brilliant, beautiful filmmaking in it, and there's things that I really liked about it, but as a whole, I didn't enjoy watching this movie, and I watched it twice, and I didn't feel very differently the second time.
Interesting.
So I'm landing on a 3. If we were still doing the plus, it'd be a 3+ because I think it's an important movie.
You can't give Dame Helen Mirren a 3 stars.
I'm not rating her. She's a 5 in everything. It doesn't matter.
I'm with you.
She's a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, she's an icon.
Yeah, because I think it's a tough movie to sit through. I don't think it quite hangs together. But I think it's important. I think if you care about movies and you care about this genre.
If you play D&D.
Yeah. I think you should watch the movie because I think it's important. But I don't like it. So that left me on a 3.
Okay. Well, I mean, I don't think it's a perfect movie, so I can't give it a 5. So predictably, I would give it a 4. It is one of the greatest fantasy movies of all time.
Yeah.
The top few are like this, Conan the Barbarian, and Fellowship of the Rings are like kind of the top 3 of all time. And
Return of the King. I had to when I was curating this fantasy series for us, I chucked out the Lord of the Rings movies because they would take out. You
have to watch all 3.
Yeah, that would take out 3 of the 5 slots.
Yeah, exactly. And so I think this is considered one of the very best swords and sorcery movies, like kind of a low fantasy movies of all time. I asked AI what was the best swords and sorcery movie, and it said Excalibur was the best, followed by Conan the Barbarian. And I asked what's the best fantasy movie, and it said Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Rings, and this was the second best. And it's just like not that AI does anything but scrape the internet, but it kind of jives with my own perceptions.
Yeah,
it is a top tier fantasy movie, but it is not a perfect movie.
Yeah.
It's really enjoyable if you like fantasy at all. If you have watched, if you've watched Lord of the Rings and you enjoyed it, you probably would like something about this. I also think that there's a certain type of person who likes old movies. For sure. If you like old movies, if you're willing to look past the technological innovation or technological levels of the time and just look at performances and decisions like cinematography, music, and score, this movie is amazing. It's so worth it. Yeah. But it's a little long, it's a little rambly, and it doesn't have a unique visual vision with regard to the costumes and the armor and all of that. It has a buckshot approach.
Just in the armor.
And the clothes.
Yeah, but it has a unique visual vision. Like, it just is not set to a time period that ever existed.
They made their own palette.
Yeah.
They created their own palette and they stuck with it. But still, 4-star. IMDb gives it 7.3. Rotten Tomatoes gives it 72. So it's kind of right where we have it. Yeah. Between a 3 and a 4, 60 and an 80. Trending slightly toward the 80, closer than the 60, but c'est la vie. I don't think that I didn't think you would give this a 3, but I knew you wouldn't give it a 5.
Yeah.
So here we are. I'm surprised that you didn't like it more than you did, but that's okay. We can't all like everything all the time.
That's true.
That's fine. So let's go ahead and take a break and then.
Welcome back, divers. It's time for our final segment, the one where I ask Dave, what are you into right now?
Well, I've been ridiculously busy in real life.
Yeah, you have.
Been doing all this preparing for my medieval hobby. I've been doing a lot at work. And so I don't have something that's really consumed a bunch of my time, but what I do have is some of my old favorites that I always go back to when I'm especially when I'm short on time and I need to get the real dope shit from the internet. I went to my YouTube channel, I looked at my history, what I've watched, and 3 YouTube channels just keep popping up for nerd stuff, and 2 of them I've mentioned on this show before.
Oh, so there's one.
So there's one that I haven't, and I think I've mentioned the person before, just in reference. But this is Matt Colville. He is the owner and main guy of N&DDDtM Productions, which is a game company that, MC, which is Matt Colville, and then DM, Dungeon Master. So he is a game designer and a writer. He's worked in video games. He's worked in lots and lots of tabletop stuff. He has a really good YouTube channel that talks about, it's got series about writing, not just writing games, but also just like writing, how to run games, how to do world building, how to do cooperative world building or cooperative storytelling with players. They have several live campaigns that they've played on there. Matt Colville has been a guest player on Critical Role and other things. He's kind of a celebrity dungeon master, but he's more celebrity game designer. And he talks a lot of game theory on his channel when he's talking about why does a game have X, Y, and Z? What experience is it trying to evoke from players? What is the cooperative thing for the whole table, not just the player who has the ability, etc. Talks about gamer culture, all these things. And so I always go to Matt Colville when it comes to he will talk about news in the pop culture in the gaming sphere. And so I think that he is a worthwhile watch if you're a gamer of any kind. Going to Matt Colville's YouTube channel, and it's just Matt_Colville, Colville. Or if you just Google MCDM, you'll find him. He has some really amazing supplements and books that he's written. And so I just wanted to recommend people go check that out if you're interested in gaming, nerd talk, specifically tabletop gaming. He is a very wise fellow who's extremely eloquent. And he's about our age. He's in his mid-40s-ish. And so he's got lots of relevant references for young Gen Xers or older millennials.
Is there like a podcast version of it too, do you think?
No, he just kind of does vlogs. He just talks.
YouTube.
He has some series. He has his most famous series is called Running the Game, about how do you DM? What do you do? And it's really good. I mean, I've been a DM forever, but I still pick things up from his Running the Game series.
Oh, cool.
Right, how about you? What are you into right now?
Similarly, I was kind of going back into something it's an old school thing for me. Every so often, Audible does, sales where, books will be marked down or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just kind of scrolling through all these discounted books, and I scrolled across a big fat book that has been on my bookshelf forever, but I was never quite able to plow through because it was such a big, daunting book. And that was James Clavell's Shogun from 1975. Oh,
wow.
It's the first book by internal chronology in the author's Asian saga, which is like a 6-book series or something, and they're all monster books. Like this is like a 54-hour audiobook.
Jeez.
And
did you get on like a BOGO or something?
It was like half price or less than half price. It was $6.99.
Ooh, that's good value.
And I love the TV miniseries adaptation of it from 1980. I've watched that a lot. We used to watch it in Japanese class, and so I was super familiar with the story, but I never got into the book. And of course the book is going to be much more in depth than the adaptation is. And this is, semi-relevant because FX and Hulu are going to be releasing a new adaptation of Shogun very soon, starring Hiroyuki Sanada as Yoshi Toranaga and Cosmo Jarvis as John Blackthorne. So this is something that's going to be coming back into the zeitgeist, and it's very samurai Game of Thrones-y. If it's about an English pilot who is on a Dutch ship that basically they're the first Dutch ship to make it to the Japans and Asia, the Asian Pacific. The only European presence there is Spanish and Portuguese.
Yeah.
So they don't land in a welcoming environment. It's a very hostile environment where the well is sort of poisoned against them when they get there. And James Clavell, he was in the Royal Navy. He's an Australian, and he spent quite a bit of time in a Japanese POW camp in World War II. And the book it's even though it's set in a different time period, I think it draws heavily from his experiences in the war and in being a Japanese prisoner.
Interesting.
It's a book from 1975. It's not entirely historically accurate, and there is some what we would think of as being problematic tropes nowadays. Okay. Like it's a bit Orientalist. But I think for when it was written, I think it is a pretty it's pretty strong. There's a reason why this has been a best-selling book for years and years. And
I think it's totally appropriate to consume historical literature and recognize problematic tropes, but also recognize the other high-quality good things about it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, considering the history of what the author went through, I think he's pretty open-minded about the Japanese people, considering his history.
Yeah.
It's just, there's some little things you would nitpick about, like you talk about historical accuracy. He describes portcullises in Osaka Castle, and they had no such thing. Or he conflates Shinto priests and Buddhist monks with each other a lot, and things like that. Like there's things where if you kind of know it, they jump out like, no, that's not right. Yeah. But a casual reader would not pick up on them, and probably in the upcoming adaptation, these things will be corrected because we're much more culturally sensitive. At this point,
they'll have a cultural sensitivity person on staff.
Yeah, and I think Hiroki Sanada is actually a producer on the show. He's not just an actor in it. Nice. So I think it's a largely Japanese cast. I think
it should be, right.
Yeah, I think yes, it should be.
So Japanese Americans, that would be okay too.
But I think a lot of those inaccuracies will be fixed in the new version.
Well, that's pretty dope. I'm going to be going to. I just solidified plans and stuff too. We're going to Kyoto in the fall, so we're going to see some of those old historic places.
Very, very cool. Well, do you want to give them the call to action?
Yeah. Subscribe to us on your favorite podcatcher, as well as YouTube, Spotify, and Audible. Don't forget to leave us a review. A 5-star review costs you nothing, but means everything to us.
New episodes of Nick and Dave Deep Dive the Metaverse drop the 1st and 15th of every month, and you can find us on all social media platforms across the Metaverse as at Deep Dive the Meta. And I'll use that to make an awkward segue and say this fantasy series that we're in right now is going to sort of signal the end for this version of Nick and Dave Deep Diving the Meta. There's new things are coming. Stay tuned.
Yeah, stay with us. We're not going anywhere. We're going to be making some changes around here.
Yeah. The metaverse is not as hospitable as it once was for us.
We got zucked.
Yeah.
Well, I guess this is really goodbye.
Don't say goodbye. Say good journey.